Hello, welcome to this museum moment. My name is Ellie Gettinger. I'm the education director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and I am delighted to join with you on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. This is an exciting time for the museum. We are opening a brand new exhibit. Actually, we're opening not one, but two new exhibits tomorrow. It's the first time we're opening a new exhibit since before COVID happened. And so there are a lot of big question marks. But the one thing that is not a question mark for us is just how excited we are about these exhibits and their themes. So the exhibits are Designing Justice, which is a poster exhibit. And then the exhibit that I'm going to kind of sideways focus on today is an exhibit called Shakespeare's in the Alley. And Shakespeare's in the Alley is an exhibit that explores Bob Dylan's lyrics through these big, bold, spectacularly big printed or handwritten sheets. That's not the right word. Molly's going to come in and correct me later. But these pieces have specific Dylan lyrics. And in looking at the Dylan lyrics, the ones that we selected specifically for this exhibit are the ones around his themes of social justice, his protest songs, the songs that became the soundtrack for the Vietnam War movement, the peace movement then, and have continued to resonate as people continue to respond and engage. And Dylan is part of a long line of Jewish protest songwriters and Jewish songwriters in general, but many of these songwriters have a focus on social justice and a focus on justice largely. And we want to talk about this within the crucible today of some very early protest songs in the United States. I want to shout out a couple of my interns who've been turning amazing work as I put these museum moments together. So Emma and Gabby, thank you so much. Today, Gabby helped me out and helped me put together this whole presentation. And so I wouldn't be able to do this work without my hardworking interns. We're looking, as we explore the specific protest songs that we're going to be exploring today, we are looking at the milieu of immigration to the United States in the early part of the 20th century. From 1880 to the 1920s, over 2 million Jews immigrate to this country and vastly change the way Jewish America looked before. And you can see in this image here, you see the kind of affluent, assimilated, acculturated German Jews welcoming on some level, and we can talk about that a little bit more at a different time, the Eastern European Jews who are coming over from places like Russia and Poland and Hungary, who tended to be more religious, who tended to be less affluent, who tended to have a different language barrier. They weren't coming as German speakers predominantly, they were coming as Yiddish speakers. And they were coming to this country for a number of reasons, but the primary one, or one of the many, is that they were fleeing persecutions like pogroms. And then they were also looking for opportunity. Within the Yiddish lexicon, it's very common to hear America referred to as the Goldene Medina, the Golden Land. And so there were huge expectations on what America could be. I want to backpedal a little and talk about kind of protest songs broadly. And in thinking about the Bob Dylan protest songs that we present, I think this actually gives a kind of interesting metric for thinking about it. According to music critic Dorian Lynskey, he writes for The Guardian, he says, a protest song is a song that addresses a political issue in a way which aligns itself with the underdog. So consider the fact that God Bless America was written during World War I and was really active in World War I. And Woody Guthrie, in response to that song, in response to kind of how omnipresent it had become in the post-World War I climate, writes, this land is your land, this land is my land. And I would say this land is your land, this land is my land, certainly reflects that kind of sense of protest song. Many of the songs that we think of as protest songs are sometimes actually poems that are set to music. And in this case, these become, the songs that we're going to talk about today really become songs that are poems that are set to music, become popularized within the labor movement. So our first songwriter that we're talking about today is a guy named Morris Rosenfeld. He was born in Poland. It was Russia, actually, at that time. The borders kept shifting. He He immigrated to New York in 1886 at that early part of that massive wave of Jewish immigration. And he worked as a tailor in a sweatshop. He published his first collections of songs. It was called Die Glocke, and then later another collection called Die Blumenkette. And many of his poems and songs were really were reflecting the conditions of what it was like to work in the sweatshops, and became kind of the rallying cry of many people in the sweatshops. They actually became popular not just in the United States but abroad. I wanted to look at some of his lyrics. This song, Mein Jingele, means and you're going to have to forgive my Yiddish pronunciation. This means my little boy, and it speaks of a father who doesn't ever see his son because he only sees him at night. And he says, I see him only at night. Work drives me out from home early and allows me to return only late. Oh, my own flesh and blood is stranger to me. Oh, my own child's glance is foreign. I come home depressed, shrouded in darkness. You know, the challenge of being a father in this universe and never seeing your children because you're working from before the sun comes up until the sun goes down, and that your lives never intersect. And he goes on to talk about, you know, when will you wake, my child? You'll not find me anymore. You know, and how sweetly this child plays, but I never see him. It really is a very sad song. In many ways, it reminds me of some of the poems of Alter Esselin, who is a Milwaukee Yiddish poet, and similarly concerned with this sense of how do you work and maintain your bigger life as well. This other song, Mein Ruheplatz, means my grace. And here he's talking about the realities of many recent immigrants. Work is a constant. There is no time to take life elsewhere. And he actually starts referring to kind of the way that work is situated in terms of slavery. He also is using this kind of strange juxtaposition between nature and technology, and how the two are very separate and distant. This one, where lives wither at machines, that is my resting place. Don't look for me where the bird sings. You will not find me there, my love. I am a slave where chains clang. That is my resting place. Don't look for me where the fountains splash. And he actually goes on to say that at some point you'll find me in my grave. It really is really sad. These are much more kind of approaching, in terms of that idea of a protest song, they're identifying certainly the underdog. They're showing what life is like. It's much more about an environmental scan, exploring the conditions of what it meant to work in the sweatshops, as opposed to, say, a call for action. And his contemporary, David Edelstadt, is much more reflective of that specific call to action type of song. The songs that are going to become rallying cries, the songs that become, known for pushing the labor movement to take action in different ways. He was also Russian-born, and he came to the United States after a pogrom in Kiev in 1881. There were a huge number of pogroms in 1881 after the Tsar had been assassinated. The plot to assassinate the Tsar was blamed on Jews, and then this kicked off a wave of pogroms throughout Russia, and he, left following this one. He immigrated in 1882. Initially, he moved to Cincinnati, which is a very large Jewish community, and he worked in the garment industry. And he continued his literary work. He was also, in addition to working as a buttonhole maker, he was also a poet and an editor. But he moved to New York in 1888, and he joined a secular Jewish anarchist group, the Pioneers of Liberty. In Yiddish, that would be Pioniere der Freiheit. And this was a secular group, but it maintained a Jewish identity and also called for anarchist action. Interestingly, they hosted Yom Kippur balls, which is a kind of the biggest oxymoron I can think of. Can you imagine having a ball on Yom Kippur? And they had publications in Yiddish. He was also the editor of a Yiddish anarchist newspaper called Freie Arbeiterstimme, and that's the voice of the free worker. And that was connected to the Pioneers of Liberty. His songs were sung on picket lines, they were sung in sweatshops, and they were later actually imported to Russia as well. He died quite young. He died in 1892 of tuberculosis. Many feel that he probably contracted this through his work in sweatshops. So the idea is that is present in many of his songs is this idea that conditions will be improved after the revolution. And for him, the revolution is an anarchist revolution, not a communist revolution. So he is writing in his song in Kampf, in Struggle. Kampf we know probably most famously from the book Hitler Wrote Mein Kampf. This was a song that was written in the United States and became kind of a Jewish Marseillaise. It was like an anthem of the Jewish workers' movement. And it ties past to present, explaining the reasons that many immigrated, while then talking about the realities after their immigration. Hated are we, driven from our homes, tortured and persecuted even to blood. And wherefore? 'Tis because we love the poor, and masses of mankind who starve for food, we are shot down on the gallows and hanged, robbed of our lives and freedom without ruth. Because of the enslaved and for the poor, we are demanding liberty and truth. But we will not be frightened from our path by darksome prisons or by tyranny. And here I have this written up here. We must awake humanity from sleep. Yea, we must make our brothers glad and free. Secure us fast with fetters made of iron. Tear us like beasts of blood till life departs. 'Tis but our bodies that you will destroy, never the sacred spirit in our hearts. You cannot kill it, tyrants of the earth. Our spirit is plant immortal, fair, its petals sweet scent of rich hue. And then he goes on to say, time will bring on new fighters as strong as we, for we shall battle ever on, nor cease to strive till all the world is free. So really a call to action there as it ends. The other song that I have, and I'll put the links up to some of these songs in the comments so you can watch them on YouTube. This is yet another call to action. Mein Savo means my testament. And he makes references like Rosenfeld to slavery, but he extends the issue past a Jewish one. This isn't connected to identity. Remember, he is part of a broader movement while it's fixed in the Jewish realm, his Jewish anarchist group, that it is part of the broader anarchist group as well. And he calls on for a unification and rising against the oppression they face of sweatshop workers altogether. This is, workers of the world unite. And he says, my song in Kampf, which rings like the chains of the enslaved Christian and Jew, forward brothers, in the ranks, raise your banners. The masses are marching onwards, ahead in the struggle towards victory. I too, in my grave, will hear my freedom song, my battle song. He did die fairly soon thereafter. This has been our museum moment today. And what I would say is, in thinking about protest songs, and please feel free in the comments to throw up some of your favorites, consider what makes a great protest song, what galvanizes people, what are the songs that have pushed you to action, what are the songs that have raised your sense, your awareness of issues, and how do these fit in? I certainly consider a song like Brother, Can You Spare a Dime, which is looking at the kind of social world during the Great Depression, as in line with these two songs. And I think that this is all part of that continuum that gets us to Bob Dylan and some more contemporary songwriters as well. Thanks very much for joining me today, and we'll see you again on Thursday when my colleague Molly will explore some things about the Warhol Suite, Jewish Suite. Have a wonderful day.